Hi, I'm Dave with Nankin Hobby, and I recently got to run the new Losi Hammer Rey. The Losi Hammer Rey is modeled after the Casey Curry Trophy Jeep, which is raced in Ultra 4 racing, most famously the King of Hammers race, which, if you're not familiar with Ultra 4 racing or King of Hammers, I highly suggest after this video you Google it because it is definitely worth checking out. It's great type of racing. There's other RC vehicles that are actually modeled after vehicles raced in King of Hammers, such as the Losi Laser Nut and the Axial Bomber, as well as the Axial Wraith. Those are all 10th scale. This Hammer Rey is also considered 10th scale, but it is much bigger than 1/10th scale. I do believe that they're considering it 1/10th scale still because the driveline utilizes 10th scale components, mostly from the Baja Ray and Rock Ray platform, which is obviously the platform and chassis that this vehicle uses. They did a killer job at replicating that truck, at that vehicle. I can't call it a Jeep because it's technically not licensed Jeep, but it does have Jeep-inspired grill, I guess you could say. But they did a great job. The overall appearance, the overall look of this thing, they knocked out of the park. 1,000%, if you ask me. From the realistic bump stops that are on the back, the little extra fire extinguishers that they have, the exhaust on the back, the spare tire, which is fully functional, the radiator, the little side mirrors that it has, the interior, the light bar. There's a light bar going across the roof. There's a light bar going across the front bumper, and as well as lights in the grill or headlights. And they just absolutely knocked it out of the park. With the way that the suspension is set up is very realistic to the real vehicle. With the sway bars in the back, they did a great job overall. And I can't say enough about how good of a job they did on this look. And anybody from Losi or Horizon that's watching, the next one you need to do is Lauren Healy's Bronco, because that's another sweet King of Hammers rig. So get to it. So running the Hammer Rey, I think I did a pretty good job at putting it through its paces. I jumped it, flipped it, ran through some water. It does have waterproof electronics, which is good. It's got a 3150 kV motor, can handle up to 3 cell, and I think it's plenty fast enough. Even on 3S, you can always upgrade it, make it faster. I never put a GPS to it, but I didn't feel I necessarily needed to, as this is something I don't think you would really do speed runs with. It's not the most stable on pavement. The larger tires and everything makes it kind of float around, feel like it just kind of is skating back and forth. Moves a lot on pavement. So it's definitely more at home on dirt, climbing hills, bouncing off of rocks, bouncing off of dirt mounds and things like that. So the place I took it, I think it handled pretty good. It was bouncing off all the the truck ruts from full-size trucks, seemed to climb hills pretty good, and handled just about everything I threw at it. So overall, I'm fairly impressed with it. Although, like every other ready to run, it does leave some to be desired in the handling aspect of it. And there are some pros and cons, which I'll get into here in a second. But overall, I mean, I think durability wise, I think it held up pretty good. It's not something I planned on taking to the skate park, so you're not going to see that any running footage at the skate park. With it being a scale type vehicle, having a solid rear axle and independent front suspension, I really don't think that that's something that is suited for a taking and bashing at a skate park. Nearly as good as, say, like a Mojave, or other independent suspension type vehicles like the Slash or Sentin. Some of those are going to be much better for taking out and really bashing on. All right, now I get to tell you about some of the pros, and the pros I think definitely outweigh the cons. Number one pro is the overall appearance, the overall look of this thing. I think they knocked out of the park, like I said before, and the scale detail in this thing is just great. I wish it did be a little bit closer to 1/10 scale. I think that they did a good job with the proportions overall. Maybe they had to make it that big to get the proportions right. I mean, being closer to that size of the Traxxas UDR, there's really not too many vehicles that are that size. There's other vehicles that are a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. And this kind of falls in between that. And I think they absolutely did a killer job with the overall look. The other pro is I feel that it has plenty of power. I'm sure everybody's going to put more power to it, but I don't know if it's really needed. I don't think it's necessary, which I know sounds funny, but what this vehicle really shines on, what this vehicle really performs best in, is the running in rough stuff, the rough terrain, the rough dirt, rough rocks. Again, it's not a rock crawler, but it's built, designed for Ultra 4 racing, the U4 stuff, where you're kind of trying to be light and nimble and kind of still trying to be fast. And, a 7,000 kV motor on 17S just isn't going to do anything in this thing. Although if you do that, I'd like to see it. So now it's time to talk to you about the few cons, the few little gripes that I have. The biggest one covers this whole platform as a whole, the Rock Ray, Baja Ray, and now the Hammer Ray. And that is the battery tray. Unfortunately, the biggest battery you can fit in there is a standard size 5,000 milliamp battery pack, whether it's 2-cell or 3-cell. You can't fit anything larger than that because that, I believe, is the largest that Spectrum makes. So if you are wanting to upgrade to something like a Gens Ace 6800, like some of their Bashing Series batteries, those are a touch too long and will not allow you to close the battery door, which is unfortunate. Now, a battery like I was running a Gens Ace 5,000 milliamp 3-cell hard case, fits perfect in this battery tray. But in order to get it to slide in right, you actually have to compress the rear suspension to slide it in between the links, because it actually goes in from the back into the chassis. So it isn't tough. It's not hard to get in, but that is the one unfortunate thing about this platform. But that's why you just buy more batteries, and we got them. So the other little gripe that I have, I would say, is more you can tweak, you can work it out, and that is it just feels slightly too narrow. Feels like it could be a touch wider. It does feel like it flips a little bit too easy at times. Again, you can tune your suspension and do things like that to account for that and to fix that. I was just running this box stock right out of the box, and I still had a ton of fun driving it. But like I said, when I mean that it flips too easy, I mean it's not like a short course truck where once it starts tumbling, you can just keep it flipping and it'll keep rolling and might land on its tires. The way that it's shaped, pretty much once it gets on its side or upside down, it's upside down or on its side. If you ran some thicker diff fluid, or maybe even a locker, if they make one, then you could honestly, if this thing lands on its side, you could probably gas it and flip this thing back over. But out of the box, the open diffs and everything, it doesn't quite do that. So those are really the only two things that I would say I have a problem with. I don't think that it is by any means not worth getting. So, yeah. So the Hammer Rey retails for $579.99, and honestly, I don't think it's a bad price for the size of the vehicle. I mean, said it before, it's very comparable to the Traxxas UDR, which that I believe is right around $800. And this is really in a class of its own, I think. As far as vehicle type, I really can't compare it to that. Vehicle size, sure. But when you compare it to the other U4 type vehicles out there, like the Laser Nut and the Bomber, the price point is right around there, and it, I think, falls right into there pretty good. And honestly, $580, it's kind of pretty normal nowadays for prices to be up there. So I really can't say anything bad about it. I definitely think that it's worth it. Does it need a couple little tweaks here and there? Sure, but what ready to run doesn't, Honestly, I've ran probably about 4 packs through this thing now, and I think I did a pretty good job at beating on it, honestly, and really never broke anything. I had one instance where the shock shaft came out of the rod end, and honestly, the spring retainer that was still stuck on the rod end. I was able to thread the rod back onto the shaft and call it good and keep going. I didn't lose anything else. That might have been more luck than anything, but I am thoroughly impressed with this thing, and you should be too. It's definitely worth checking out. And I hope that it brings a whole new class into U4 stuff and into the U4 racing. And I would definitely, hands down, give it a 9 out of 10. If I had to be a stickler, it all comes down to that battery tray, not being able to run a bigger battery. But again, that is not going to deter me from purchasing one for sure. I definitely got this thing really dirty, really ran it through the mud, and now I got to go clean it. So you be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.